They said the laptop was found 3 feet off the shoulder of Highway 36, screen cracked, battery swollen, dust caked into its hinges. The files inside were plain text, timestamps, police-style logs, signed by Calvin Bruce, former sergeant of the St. Louis PD. Bruce had disappeared in 2021. No trace of his truck, badge, or body, only this laptop, its final entries written from a town that doesn't exist. There's no Shady Oaks in Missouri. I checked. Every database, every Secretary of State record, every county map. Nothing. No zip code, no census record, not even a ruin on satellite view. And yet Bruce described it like a place he'd walked through, a courthouse square, a tailor, a cafe, citizens who bartered books for bullets. If his writing is genuine, then Shady Oaks sits somewhere between imagination and abduction. If it's fiction, then he died for a story. April 16, 2021, Log 3 of Calvin Bruce, Chief of Police, Shady Oaks. By my third day, I'd almost convinced myself the air here smelled different, sharper, like cedar and dust baked too long in the sun. I'd swept the station clean, old papers everywhere, yellowed Post-its curling off the desk. The former chief hadn't kept proper reports, but he'd left fragments of thought like breadcrumbs. Wayne, vampires. Don't answer the radio after 2 a.m. Check Pond 9. Somewhere between paranoia and revelation. Upstairs, I found a half-assembled ham radio, bits of walkie-talkies, solder scars, a cracked antenna. Maybe he wanted to call for help. Maybe he just wanted proof that the outside world still spoke. Either way, I understood. The silence here feels engineered. I can't yet open the rifle cage, old Winchester inside, but I've got my Glock and my Remington. Ammunition's a kind of currency here, rarer than salt. People trade eggs for shells, books for bullets. They say the reloader lives out by the creek, a man everyone owes but no one invites. At least the locals trust me. Caitlin thanked me for handling the hissers that tore through her chicken coops. She asked if I'd found her missing pig, Wilbur. I told her I wasn't trained to track hogs through cursed woods and left it there. Truth is, Wilbur's smarter than most men I've met since I got here. If he escaped, I hope he keeps running. Milton at the cafe made me an omelet with wild mushrooms and beans. No salt, no cheese, but there was comfort in the hiss of the skillet, the clatter of forks, the sound of people pretending life was normal. They call the things that attacked me hissers, said they dropped from trees and slit throats before they hit the ground. Everyone nodded like it was weather talk. I met Lenny the grocer again. Daylight makes him human. He handed me pumpkin seeds as payment for my help. No cash, no trade. Town already owes you, he said. We all do. He told me folks spend nights indoors reading by candlelight, hoarding board games and prayer books. The dark belongs to something else. When I asked about a woman named Wanda, one who'd supposedly come from outside, he said she lived alone now, barely spoke, maybe lost her mind. People do crazy things when they're desperate, he said. He's right. Desperation is a language you don't forget once you've spoken it. By noon, I decided to visit Lafa Randell, the local naturalist, or so they called her. She lived on the outskirts, beyond where the houses start to collapse inward like tired lungs. The clerk, Adam, said she knew the local fauna better than anyone. Maybe she could tell me what those spider-like creatures were. I packed my gear. In Shady Oaks, you don't walk anywhere unarmed. The farther I went down Quartz Avenue, the thinner the town became. Houses spaced like missing teeth, windows boarded, fences sagging into brush. Even sunlight felt reluctant here. When I saw the steel mailbox marked 369, I knew it was hers. That's when I caught it. Movement in the upper window across the road, a flash of red, gone before I blinked. I raised my shotgun, held still long enough for the silence to sweat. Nothing moved, so I kept walking. The smell reached me first. Something cooking, herbs and fat, and beneath it, something wrong. Sweet like rot, but familiar. The cabin door hung open, thin smoke rising through the doorway. Miss Randell? No answer. Inside, the air was thick with dried plants and old wood smoke. A cast-iron stove glowed red, a pot bubbling over. I lifted it off the burner before it caught fire. That's when the scent clicked. Belladonna. Deadly nightshade. I'd known it from a poisoning case years ago. unmistakable. Why the hell was she cooking poison? Behind the cabin, a smaller shack waited, door half open. I called again. Still nothing. The floor was slick with blood. Carcasses. Deer, rabbits hung from hooks. A butcher's work, not a killer's, though the difference felt paper thin here. A blade lay on the table, its edge crusted dark. She was a hunter then, or she'd been one until very recently. I turned back toward the path and stopped cold. In the mud, boot heel gouges deep, dragging backward toward the road. Whoever it was had fought to stay. Lost. Something moved in the house across the street. I crossed fast, shotgun low. A tuft of red hair clung to the gate post. Fresh. I tried the door. Locked. Fine. I wedged open Caitlin's gifted buck knife, old but sharp, and jammed it into the latch until the wood splintered. The house breathed out a smell of mildew and something beneath it, wet fur, metal. Rooms gutted by time, wallpaper curled, furniture bloated with rot, basement stairs yawning black. Then a grunt from upstairs. Not human, like a pig gargling a voice it had stolen. I went up slow. At the end of the hall, a door shut tight, all others open. Always the closed one. Police, I said. Identify yourself. A whimper answered. I kicked the door in. Two creatures no taller than my waist stood over a kneeling woman with red-streaked hair, hands bound, gagged. The floor beneath her was marked in a circle of strange letters, carved, not drawn. The creatures wore dark hoods, bodies thick, arms corded like children molded from wood. Their faces grinned, wide, wet, and wrong. I froze. She didn't. Her eyes found mine, wild with relief. One of the things lunged. It hit my leg before I could aim. Claws like hooks tearing denim. I screamed, yeah, I'll admit it, and smashed the stock of my shotgun down on its skull. It fell, squealing, but two more came fast. One tore the gun from my hands and flung it across the room. Another bit into my arm. Teeth small and serrated like a dolphin's nightmare. Eyes black as oil beads. Training took over. I drew my Glock, fired point blank into the one at my leg. It shrieked and dropped, but the other kept tearing into me. I reached for the knife with my free hand and drove it into its chest. Warm blood spattered up my sleeve. The bound woman lunged forward, grabbed the wounded creature, and with a roar that didn't belong in a human throat, threw it through the broken window. Its squeal faded into the yard below. The last one tried to crawl away. I shot it 3 times. Silence, except for our breathing. Silver cuffs and a matching key lay on the floor, glinting in the dusty light. I looked down at my bleeding arm, then at her. She stared back, eyes shifting like the surface of a pond, yellow, then hazel. Before I could speak, she crossed the room and pressed her lips hard against mine. The kiss was desperate, hungry for life. When she pulled away, she gasped, clutched her sides, and bolted. By the time I reached the stairs, she was already out the door. I grabbed my shotgun, snapped a few photos of the ritual circle on my phone, and followed. Outside, the thrown creature lay broken on the path, its grin finally gone. Back at her cabin, I found her hunched over the stove, ladling that same nightshade stew into a bowl. She drank deep and straightened. Color returned to her face. Her eyes cleared. "Who are you?" she asked. "Your new chief of police," I said. She laughed. "Then you're a fool." When I asked about the poison, she shook her head. "You don't know what you're talking about." She called the creatures Puckwudgies, gremlins that had hunted her for years. "They're bold now," she said, "but they'll think twice after today." She cleaned my wounds with oak bark and witch hazel, muttering words I didn't recognize. Her hands were warm, steady. For the first time since stepping into this phantom town, I felt almost safe. As she wrapped the bandage tight, she said softly, "Welcome to Shady Oaks, Chief. You'll need more than a badge here," and for the first time, I believed her. I didn't realize how hard my heart was thudding until the bandage pressed into it from the outside. Pulse tapping in my hand, in the bite, in the room. Lafa tied the last knot briskly and leaned back to study her work, eyes the color of river water when the cloud moves off the sun. "You shouldn't be standing," I told her. "You shouldn't be bleeding," she said. "And yet." I looked at the bowl beside the stove. A slick of dark tea clung to its rim, oily, slightly sweet. "Belladonna," I said. You drink poison, you walk straighter. Am I supposed to pretend that makes sense? It does if you know how much, she replied. Nightshade isn't only poison, Chief. Dosage is a door, a small one. Open to what? To the body again, she said, almost weary. To this one, when something else has been trying to borrow it. It landed inside me like hail. I remembered her face as she'd staggered in, yellow-eyed, like a lantern seen through smoke. I wanted to dismiss it. I didn't. She rinsed the bowl in a little basin, the water staining brown, then wiped it clean with a cloth that had seen years of use. Those things, I said. Puckwudgies. Call them gremlins if you must, she said. Puckwudgie is older. Names have teeth. Be careful who you feed with them. I sat because my knees asked me to. The cabin's rafters were strung with dried plants, yarrow, foxglove, bone set. Some I recognized, some I didn't. A copper kettle breathed steam on the back of the iron stove. Warm damp clung to the windows, beating and running in slow threads. Outside, the woods whispered as if something had just remembered where we were. You fought them before, I said. Fought, traded, trapped, she said. They learn. They test doors. They've been pushing harder lately. Why you? Her mouth ticked. Because I say no. Because I live alone. Because I know what they are. Take your pick. She moved with a strength that didn't announce itself. Practical, deliberate. Every shelf and hook had a reason. Every blade was sharpened. This wasn't a witch's cottage from a story. It was a place designed by decades of waking up alive. What about the circle? I asked. On the floor upstairs. The symbol work. She shook her head once. Not mine. Their borrowed script. They use it like a fishing line does a hook. You were the rock in the current today. Try to stay that way. Try? I said. You bled, she answered. You made noise. They don't like noise when it isn't theirs. She set the kettle aside and poured a measure of brown tonic from one of the bottles into a cup, then handed it to me. Oak bark, witch hazel, something camphorous and bitter. Drink, she said. It burned down my throat and settled into a spreading warmth, the pain in my forearm stepping back like it had been asked politely. I looked down at the bandage, cloth torn from an old shirt, clean and tightly wrapped. You've done this before, I said. I had to, she said simply. What were they trying to do to you? Make me stop saying no, she said. Make me walk out after dark without a light. Make me open the door when the knocking sounds like someone I miss. That's not what I meant. I know, she said, and the hint of a smile returned. But that's all you can do with them. Refuse the first trick. If you fail there, the rest comes easy. I thought about the bound wrists, the silver cuffs, the way her voice had gathered itself after she'd drunk from the bowl. Why silver? I asked. Because it's honest, she said. It doesn't lie about what it touches. I tried to imagine the town clerk, the tailor, the grocer, ordinary people set against rules like these. I tried to imagine any of it on a county assessor's map. People will ask what happened, I said. I'm going to need to write it down in a way that doesn't get me laughed out of my own station. Then write what you saw, she said. Not what you think. People in Shady Oaks can live with the first thing. The second tends to grow teeth. She cleaned the counter where the bowl had rested, setting things right, restoring small order. That's what survival looks like here, I realized. A dozen tiny repairs that keep the night from becoming a continuous surface. They called the tree things hissers, I said, feeling my neck prickle at the memory of chitin splitting under a boot heel. You called them ticks. She gave me a sideways look. Did they explode? Then they're ticks. Hissers drop. Ticks burst. The woods have more mouths than you have bullets. Good to know, I muttered, about the bullets. Lenny says they're currency. He also says there's a reloader. People without salt invent their own flavors, she said. You should find the key to your cage instead of breaking it. Winchester or not, a hammer's a poor locksmith compared to time. I've been trying, I said. The station is full of someone else's thoughts. Maybe the key's in there and I just don't know how to read him yet. Then learn his handwriting, she said. The dead leave doors. Sometimes they're shaped like habits. I made myself stand. The room swayed and settled. Will they come back today? I asked. Not through the front, she said. Gremlins hate to repeat a trick where they failed. They will watch, though. They will wait for you to be hungry or lonely. That's their favorite season. I'm not in the habit of celebrating lonely, I said. You will be, she said, not unkindly. Shady Oaks has a way of emptying rooms. Keep people near while you can. I remembered the laugh in Milton's cafe, the way everyone talked like the world might nod along if they kept their voices low. I thought of Wanda, the woman from outside, knocking once a month for supplies, never for conversation. The red hair on the gatepost hadn't been hers. Lafa's streaks told me that, but the fact she existed at all mattered. I need to find Wanda, I said. And I need to speak to Adam about anything the last chief wrote that wasn't a riddle, and I'm going to need you to tell me if there are any other things with names that can bite. There are many, she said, but you don't need names for all of them to survive. You need habits. Stay indoors at sundown. Don't answer a knock after the third one. Don't follow your name into the trees. If you hear water where there isn't any, stop walking. If the lights come on in an empty house, leave it empty. That last one, I said, I already failed it. You didn't, she said. You carried someone out. That is the only exception that matters. She touched my bandaged arm the way you test a knot, then stepped back. Go on, Chief, before it gets late. Outside, the light laid itself across Quartz Avenue in long strips. Dust hung there as if reluctant to fall. Across the road, the house I'd broken into had quieted into a shell, window a mouth rimmed with broken teeth. The thrown gremlin lay ruined in the yard, its dark blood already thickening. Flies had learned its name. I stood a long time, listening for the sound of a second set of footsteps, a breath that wasn't mine. The town gives you that habit quick, counting absences. On the walk back, the streets sharpened one by one into human shapes. A boy ran with a stick along a fence, tapping each slat as though to make a map that only his ears could read. A woman lifted sheets from a line with quick, snapping motions, eyes on the sky. At the edge of the square, a man mended a chair with a length of wire, twisting it with pliers until it sang tight. I pushed into Milton's as evening softened the windows. The skillet hissed again. The clock over the counter ticked as if the hands were heavy. Milton looked up, took in the bandage, and did not ask. He set a mug in front of me and poured from a pot that never seemed to be empty. On the house, Chief, he said, on account of whatever you did. I kicked a window, I said. Then you did it at the right time. He slid a plate of fried potatoes my way. Eat fast. Lights go dim fast tonight. The rules, I said. Give me the short version, Milton. He counted on his fingers, eyes never leaving mine. Inside by sundown. Curtains closed. No candles in front windows. Don't use the ham radio except at noon. He paused, mouth twisting. Don't talk to the pond, ever. The pond, I said, another detail in the old chief's notes. Check pond 9. Milton shrugged, lips thinning. It sounds like your mother if you're tired enough. That's what people say. I'm tired, I said. You are, he agreed. That's why you'll sleep at the station tonight with the light under the door. Best you can do your first week. Wanda? I asked. He nodded toward the far corner where a bulletin board held scraps of paper, twine, a broken key tied with red thread. She posts lists, he said. For trade. Doesn't wait around. If you want to meet her, be at the laundromat at first bell on a Monday. That's all I got. Today isn't Monday, I said. That's right, he said. Which leaves you with your paperwork and your locks. Eat. I ate. The potatoes were hot and simple, salt from a jar that had more thimble than ocean left in it, grease soaked into brown paper. The heat drew the tremor out of my hands. When I finished, Milton slid over a cloth-wrapped parcel. For later, he said. Don't open it here. What is it? Something you'll need if you get the key, he said. In the station, the air smelled like old paper and metal fatigue. The half-built ham radio sat like a confession on the records desk. I spread the former chief's notes out and started reading for the 5th time, the curt sentences, the arrows, the underscored warnings that looked more like prayers. Wayne, vampires. Check pond 9. Don't answer the radio after 2 a.m. Knife in desk leg, not drawer. Special knock. I knelt and felt under the front leg of the desk. My fingers brushed metal, cold, narrow, familiar. A key. I stood with it in my palm and felt the town lean closer, as if listening to what I would do with this small bit of permission. The rifle cage waited in the back room behind a door that stuck when humidity rose. I slid the key in. It turned like a sigh. Inside, the Winchester rested on a rack beside 2 boxes of shells that had been rationed by a dead man's hand. On the shelf above, a silver flask sat with a cloth wrapped around it. I unstoppered the flask and smelled oak smoke, a whisper of something floral. Not whiskey. Tincture. A field in a bottle. The cloth hit another object, a silver cuff, twin to the ones I'd seen at the house, but old, tarnished, etched with a thin line of script like a river. I set it down and felt the room change temperature. Barely. Night in Shady Oaks doesn't fall. It seals. I lit the desk lamp and placed it on the floor so its glow drew a thin rectangle under the door, a promise to anything watching that someone was home and awake enough to refuse. In the quiet, the ham radio looked like an unfinished sentence. I reached for it. I thought of noon. I thought of the rule. I thought of the pond and the sound it would borrow if I let it. I pulled my hand back and opened Milton's parcel instead. Inside were 12 paper cartridges, hand-rolled, neat as birthday candles. On the butcher paper he'd wrapped them in, he'd written a single line in pencil. "You're the noise now." I sat with that until my breathing matched the clock. When the light under the door flickered with someone else's shadow, I didn't move. The shadow waited, then went away. I wrote the day's report exactly as I had lived it, without names for things that wouldn't hold still. Outside, the street coughed and settled. Somewhere, a board creaked inside an empty house. The town has a throat. The town swallows. I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet like it was a radio station I had to tune by breath. Somewhere between 1 minute and the next, the air sharpened with the smell of wet leaves. That's when I knew morning would come, and with it, answers shaped like questions. Wanda. The pond. The circle carved into the old wood floor, and the fact that a town with no name on any map had just offered me a key. Tomorrow I would decide which door it belonged to. The first sound I heard that morning wasn't the clock or the wind. It was water. Faint, rhythmic, lapping at the edge of the floorboards like something far below had found a pulse. The station didn't sit anywhere near the creek. There shouldn't have been water at all. I sat up slow. My head felt clear, too clear, the kind of clarity that comes right before the world turns wrong. The sound stopped the moment I looked at the door. When I stepped outside, Shady Oaks felt hollowed out like it had held its breath all night. Dew hung thick on the grass, the air sweet and still. The church bell hadn't rung yet, and the square looked pinned in place by light alone. Across the street, Milton's Cafe was dark, the curtains drawn. The only movement was a dog, lean, gray, with eyes too bright, trotting across the empty street toward the woods. It stopped halfway, sniffed the air, then bolted the moment it saw me watching. The pond rule sat in my head like a warning label. Don't talk to the pond, ever. Yet the sound of water had come from beneath the station, from inside the earth that held this town up. I couldn't ignore that. I packed my gear, flashlight, shotgun, my badge, a habit more than a necessity now, and the old chief's key on a chain. Outside, the world was pale gold. Birds chattered too loudly, as if mimicking noise rather than making it. Every step toward the outskirts felt heavier, as if the road didn't quite agree with my decision. Pond 9 sat beyond the tree line, behind a split-rail fence that had more nails than wood left. The air changed there, cooler, smelling of iron and rot. It was circular, unnaturally so, with no inlet, no outlet, perfectly still except for a single bubble that rose every few seconds and broke with a soft plop. I crouched by the water's edge. Something shimmered beneath the surface, like a reflection waiting for a face to borrow. "Chief Bruce," a voice said behind me. I turned fast. Wanda stood 10 feet away, tall, thin, wrapped in a long gray coat, even though the air was warm. Her hair hung in streaks of silver and brown. Her eyes looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. She smiled. A small, brittle thing. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Neither should you," I replied. She looked past me to the water. It calls easier in the morning. You don't have to be tired to hear it anymore. You heard it too? She nodded. Everyone hears it once. Not everyone answers. I stood, keeping a few feet between us. Milton said you used to come from outside. What happened? She pulled a small metal flask from her coat pocket, unscrewed the lid, and poured a clear liquid onto the ground. It hissed when it hit the dirt. The road doesn't end here, she said. It folds, like paper. When you cross a certain mile, like you come back through the crease. That's how they keep the town small. They? I asked. She pointed to the water. That. For a heartbeat, I thought she meant her reflection. Then I saw it, another shape in the pond, darker, standing just beneath the surface, mirroring us but slower, like a film running at half speed. When I raised my shotgun, the reflection did too, though it held no weapon, only a smile. Don't, Wanda hissed. It remembers intent. I held still. The reflection moved closer, its outline rippling but never breaking. And then its mouth opened. My own voice came out. You're the noise now. The words Milton had written on the cartridge paper. I stumbled back. Wanda grabbed my sleeve, hard. That's how it starts, she said. It doesn't lie, it repeats. That's how it makes you trust it. What happens if I answer? You stop being where you stand, she said. The bubble rose again, broke the surface, and this time the air smelled faintly of blood. Who's keeping it here, I asked. Lafa? The gremlins? No, she said quietly. We are. Every time we stay, we feed it shape. Every time we write or speak or pray, it listens. You think Shady Oaks is haunted? It's alive, and it's lonely. She looked at me then with eyes that almost softened. You still have the key? I nodded. Good, she said. Because there's one door left you shouldn't open. When it knocks, it'll use your name twice. We walked back through the trees in silence. She stopped once to touch the bark of an old oak, fingers tracing something carved into it. A spiral, faint, nearly swallowed by moss. That's how we mark safe paths, she said. Spirals turn things inward. Circles let them out. I memorized the shape. At the edge of town, she stopped and turned toward me. If you find the station basement, don't go down without a light, she said. The old chief tried. The pond came up through the cracks. I wanted to ask how she knew, but she was already walking away, fading into the heat shimmer. When I looked again, she was gone. Back at the station, the floor felt different beneath my boots. The boards near the rear wall bowed ever so slightly, and the smell, damp, metallic, hung in the air like a thought I didn't want to finish. I dropped to one knee, pressed my palm flat, cold. I pried up a corner of the floorboard with the buck knife. The sound that came out wasn't air or water, it was a sigh, a slow exhale, deep and wet, like something waking up. I replaced the board and stepped back, forcing myself to breathe evenly. The light from the desk lamp wavered as if disturbed by unseen motion. Then, 3 knocks, slow, deliberate, from below. I didn't move. Another 3, louder this time. Then silence. I should have left right then, gone to Lafa's, to Milton's, anywhere but here. But something in that sound wasn't just a threat. It was familiar, like hearing your own heartbeat echo through the wrong side of a wall. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with the Winchester across my lap and watched the lamp's reflection tremble in the window. Outside, the fog pressed against the glass like breath. When it cleared for a moment, I saw her, Wanda, standing in the street, coat open, hands at her sides. Her face was turned toward the station. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read them. It's awake. The light flickered, the radio hissed, and from beneath the floor came the slow sound of water again, lapping, rising, waiting. And for the first time, I believed this town wasn't built on something ancient. It was built to hold it in. When dawn finally came, it didn't feel like sunrise. It felt like reprieve, the kind of light that sneaks in on its knees, afraid of being seen. The fog didn't burn off, it only retreated, curling against the tree line like it knew something was scheduled to happen after breakfast. I didn't eat. My stomach felt like it was stuffed with lead shot. I just brewed the last of the grounds Milton had given me and sat with the cup cooling in my hands. The radio across the room clicked softly, as if breathing. It had been silent all night except for one faint pop at 3:07 a.m., a static cough that might have been the air shifting, or it might have been the town saying, "I'm still here." On my desk lay the old chief's logbook. I'd read the first 6 pages before sleep went extinct, each entry shorter than the last, each date crossed out until there was just one line etched so deep the pen tore through the paper. "If you hear your own voice, don't answer." I wanted to think it was metaphor, but nothing in Shady Oaks stayed metaphor for long. Around 10, Milton came by with 2 jars of beans and a look like he'd walked out of a bad dream that was still following him. "People saw you at the pond," he said, "or saw something that looked like you." "That's comforting." He didn't smile. "Stay away from the water. I'm not joking, Chief. Last man who went there didn't come back whole. He came back echoing." Echoing. Milton hesitated. His hands twisted the brim of his hat, like he was trying to finish someone else's sentence but didn't know what the words meant anymore. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, said his name tasted wrong. "Who was he?" "Your predecessor." I didn't answer him, couldn't. He set the jars down on the desk, stepped back, Gustav, "You've got a hole under this place," he said finally. "Don't let it get hungry. Light helps. Keep something silver close. That's what Lafa says." "She's right," I said. He nodded once, then left without looking back. After he was gone, the silence came down like a curtain. Even the flies had gone quiet. I moved the rug aside. The floorboards I'd pried up yesterday sat loose, like they'd been waiting for me to make the next move. I set the lamp on the floor, loaded the Winchester, and lifted one board free. The smell hit first, wet stone and old copper. Below, a narrow stairway wound down into dark. Every instinct I had screamed to leave it shut, but the knocks, the voice, the way the town had leaned toward me like a question that expected an answer. If I ignored it, someone else would have to answer later. The steps were slick, carved from the earth itself, walls beaded with condensation. Halfway down, my lamp guttered and flared back, throwing the shadows of my boots ahead like they were running away. At the bottom waited a space no bigger than a cellar, but the ceiling arched like a tunnel. The floor wasn't dirt. It was stone, fitted without mortar, slick with moisture. In the middle stood a table, or something like it. It was built from planks nailed together, covered in maps, hand-drawn, layered, pinned with rusted nails. Every one showed the same thing: Missouri's northwest counties. But in each, the roads twisted differently, like veins in a diseased heart. And there, right where no map should hold a town, sat Shady Oaks, a perfect circle drawn in black ink, always in the same place. Pinned beside the maps was a photograph, grainy, overexposed, a group of men in sheriff's uniforms standing in front of a sign that read, "Welcome to Shady Oaks." The man in the middle was me, my face, my badge number, but the print dated 1974. I stared until my brain refused to keep shape. My first thought wasn't fear. It was anger, pure, hot, directionless. Someone was playing a trick. Someone had built a mythology out of stolen faces. Then I saw the writing scrawled on the wall behind the table. Every chief is the same man. Every man forgets until the pond remembers him. My mouth went dry. A sound behind me, soft, wet, deliberate. I turned. A figure stood halfway down the stairs, uniform, hat brim low. The old chief, or what was left of him. His skin shone damp and pale, eyes clouded like pond water. He opened his mouth and my voice came out. "Don't answer," he said. The world tilted. "I'm not." "Don't," he said again, louder this time, voice shaking the lamp's flame. "Don't let it finish the word." "Finish what?" The air behind him rippled. A hand, too long, too thin, reached from the wall and took him by the shoulder. He didn't fight. He just looked at me once, almost relieved, and whispered, "Tell her the circle's open." Then the wall swallowed him whole. I don't remember climbing back up. My next clear thought was the station floor slamming shut above me, my breath tearing out in clouds. The lamp had gone out. Outside, the daylight had turned the color of rust. I bolted the door, backed into the corner, and sat there until my pulse slowed enough to hear the small sounds again. The clock, the faraway hum of Milton's stovepipe, and beneath it, the faint hiss of something wet dragging itself through the soil. When I finally stood, I saw what the old chief had meant by the circle. On the window glass, fog had drawn a perfect ring, unbroken, pulsing faintly with each breath I took. Every time I exhaled, the circle glowed. I ran to Lafa's. She met me at the door, eyes wide before I spoke. "You went below," she said flatly. "I smelled the stone on you." "I found maps," I said. "Photos. A man who looked like me." "You found the seam," she said. "It's never sealed for long. That's what the pond feeds on. Memory. Shape. The moment you recognize yourself down there, it starts to copy." "It already did," I said. It spoke in my voice. "Then you have less time than I thought." She pushed past me, gathered jars from the shelf, threw them into a satchel that clinked like wind chimes made of bones. "We have to mark the edges before it widens. Where did you see the circle?" "On the window." "Good. That means it hasn't left yet." She handed me a handful of silver filings wrapped in paper. "Spread these across your threshold and keep talking until dawn. If you stop, it might think you've gone quiet enough to replace." "Replace?" She met my eyes. "Every chief is the same man, Calvin. The town just forgets the parts it doesn't need until it grows hungry again." Outside, thunder rolled low, though no storm showed on the horizon. The sound came from beneath the ground, deep as a heartbeat. Lafa tightened her satchel strap. "We're running out of middles. Either you close the circle tonight or Shady Oaks remembers the rest of you." "Tell me how." She smiled sadly. "You already started." Back at the station, I scattered the filings like salt, their glint catching the dim light. The radio clicked once. Then again, a slow voice, mine but older, rawer, came through the static. "Chief, tell her the circle's open." I shut my eyes. The pond's voice answered, bubbling up through the floorboards, a perfect echo layered underneath. "Tell her." And for the first time, I understood what it wanted. Not worship, not blood. Recognition, the kind only a name could give. When the knocking started again, 3 times, patient human, I didn't lift my weapon. I only said the one thing that came natural. "My name's Calvin Bruce." The air went still. The light dimmed. The pond stopped breathing. For a moment, I thought maybe that was enough. Then, from the basement, my own voice whispered back, soft and clear, "No, it's mine." The temperature fell so fast it cracked the air. By dusk, the street lamps were glowing amber through the fog, each halo a small drowning moon. I'd scattered the silver dust like Lafa told me across the windowsills, the doorframe, even the corners of the map table. The filings pulsed when the light hit them, tiny sparks like frost catching fire. At 9:14 p.m., the radio came alive again. No static this time, just breathing. Wet, even, slow. The kind that fogs a microphone. Then my own voice spoke. "You made the circle too wide." The cord was still unplugged. I looked at the floor. Water crept from the cracks between boards, thin silver threads joining into a puddle near the desk. The smell of the pond filled the room. I forced my voice steady. "You're not me. Me." It laughed. A low, empty sound that came from inside my chest before the air. "We share lungs," it said. Why waste them arguing? The lamp flickered. The circle of light shrank until it was no wider than my boots. Every instinct screamed to run, but if what Lafa said was true, the circle needed closing, not flight. Running would only feed it space. I pulled the old chief's key from around my neck. It hummed faintly in my hand, a vibration that traveled up my arm into the bones. The silver cuff from the cage sat on the table beside the maps, tarnished to black. I slipped the cuff over my wrist. Cold burned like ice in reverse. The radio crackled again. Through the static came another voice, hers. "Lafa. Calvin, if you can hear me, keep the lamp burning. Don't let it say your name 3 times. Don't let it finish." Her words warped at the edges, stretching like they were underwater. I shouted back, but the transmission folded in on itself, replaced by a single tone that rose and fell like breathing. The puddle on the floor trembled. Then the surface broke. A hand, pale, waterlogged, veins black, reached out, fingers clawing at the wood. It braced, pulled, and another figure began to climb through. It was me, or something rehearsing how to be me. Its hair hung in wet ropes, face half-rotted, eyes glassy and clear as mirrors. It smiled with my teeth. "You left the door open," it said. The cuff burned against my wrist. I raised the Winchester, barrel shaking. "Back down," I said. "Down's home," it murmured. "You made me climb so far to say it." It stepped forward. Water pooled around its feet, carrying the smell of iron and rain. Behind it, the hole shimmered like moonlight on oil, depth pretending to be reflection. Every rule in my head shouted contradiction. Don't answer your own voice. Don't speak your name. Don't stop talking. So I spoke. Anything to keep the rhythm alive. "Milton makes the best damn coffee in this town. Lafa's too proud to admit she's scared. The pond lies. The pond lies." The thing hissed, sound slicing the air like a blade drawn across bone. "It doesn't lie. It remembers." I fired. The shot tore the air apart, deafening in the small room. The figure's chest exploded in spray and smoke, but instead of falling, it staggered back laughing. Each laugh bubbled, echoed, and then burst into a dozen smaller voices, repeating my words out of order. "Lafa's scared. Best coffee. The pond lies. The pond lies." They layered into nonsense until they became a chant. The water on the floor pulsed with each syllable. I fired again. The light blew out. Darkness swallowed everything except the circle of silver filings. They glowed faintly, outlining a shape that wasn't mine anymore. I felt it trying to pull at me, not my body, but the outline of thought behind it. Like two silhouettes arguing over who should cast the shadow. The cuff seared. I shouted, didn't matter what. Words spilled raw. Every name I remembered, every city I'd driven through, every badge number I'd ever been given. The thing screamed back in 1,000 accents of my own voice, then fell silent. When I lit the lamp again, the water was gone. Only damp boards and the smell of burned powder remained. The radio was dead, its faceplate cracked. On the window, the fog ring had broken, split down the middle like something had clawed its way out. I found Lafa at dawn, sitting on her porch with the satchel open beside her. Her eyes were rimmed red, but alive. "You closed it," she said. "I shot it." She smiled sadly. That's one way of closing. I told her what I'd seen, the copy, the laugh, the words. She listened without interruption, then handed me a small tin of dried herbs. "Keep burning these in the station. It'll hold for a while, until the next time the pond gets lonely." "How long is a while?" She looked toward the trees, where morning light dripped through the mist like honey through cloth. "Depends how loud you breathe," she said. That evening, I sat on the station steps and watched the sky bruise purple. Shady oaks moved around me like a creature settling into sleep, doors closing, curtains drawn, dogs herded inside. The circle on the glass didn't return. The radio stayed quiet. But sometimes in the stillness between the clock ticks, I hear the faintest sound, water, lapping somewhere deep under the floor. And I tell myself it's just memory moving in its sleep. Because if it isn't, then I'm the echo now.